Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 61. I'm your host, Roman Zelchenko, a former immigration lawyer and now the co-founder of an immigration tech startup called Laborless, which automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which brings you this show and is a digital marketing agency for the immigration and mobility space. Today, episode 61, I'm really excited to have a special, well, I guess every guest is special, but our guest today, Anand Diraviyam, who is the director of product at Airs. So Airs is a relocation management company that effectively helps companies, employers that have a global footprint carry or bring folks from one country to another. They work alongside immigration law firms and tax providers, and of course the in-house teams at the different employers that are bringing people around the world. They really help facilitate the movement of folks. I come from a U.S. immigration background, and when I practiced immigration law, I was very much U.S. focused, inbound. But obviously, large companies move people all over the world. And as a U.S. immigration lawyer, you can't do that. You're focused on moving people into the U.S. So RMCs, relocation management companies like Airs, help facilitate the global movement of people. I hope I got that more or less right. But maybe to bring in to correct me, but generally, without further ado, Anand, thank you so much for being here and for joining. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today.
Nice to meet you, or nice to talk to you again, Roman. And hello, everybody.
Absolutely.
Happy to be part of the show.
Likewise. So before we jump in, I just want to just mention to folks, whoever's watching or listening live, please, give us a thumbs up, ask any questions, leave any comments as we have our conversation. I love finding out where people are when they're watching this. So if you're, tell us where you are in America or around the world, that would be super cool. Where you work, we'll give you a quick, cool shout out. And yeah, as we go along with the conversation, please, leave us any questions and we'll bring them up and discuss them. So Anand, I want to, get started with the idea of your sort of journey and your story as just a professional, right? And it's cool because I like to have these conversations, of course, when the guest who works in the immigration or mobility space also went through the immigration process themselves. I mean, I was really young, but my family immigrated here from what is now Ukraine, back then the Soviet Union. I grew up really in New York, but of course in an immigrant household. And so I have that sort of connection to immigration as very near and dear to my heart. And I never intended to work in immigration and just sort of found it by accident when I was in law school and really fell in love with it. It was my first internship and obviously have been doing all sorts of things in the industry. So I know you came to the US from India, but I don't know, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for, what was it like growing up, in India? You went to school there, obviously, before you came here. So I don't know, what can you share about that?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm from India. I'm a first generation immigrant. So came into the US for work on a H-1B. But before that, growing up, I was more studied in southern part of India. I went to college for engineering and computer science and electronics major, and worked for a company called Infosys, which is a more a software company. And I worked back in India, and we had a client called Mellon Bank, which is based out of Pittsburgh. And I used to work there. And then they wanted to bring people here so that on site, in terms of making sure the work is done as a part of the engagement. So I came to Pittsburgh back in 2001 with 2 suitcases, and that is how I relocated. Of course, there was a generous relocation package, but I was a bachelor then, and I didn't have a lot of things to move. So the 2 suitcases were my belongings, and I came here. And I've never been to Pittsburgh, or that was my first time coming into even US, and looked up a apartment, stayed there, and we were one of the very few people in the Mellon Bank account at that time, because the Infosys had just won the contract, so there was not a lot of people we knew here too. So 1 or 2 people were there, and it was different in terms of getting to get accustomed with people, cultural, and everything. But overall, I think fell in love with Pittsburgh, and now I'm here with a family with two kids, and I have a lot of friends and family also living in New York or San Francisco, and they tell all the time, "How come you're living in Pittsburgh?" And I say, I wouldn't move out of Pittsburgh unless something major changes because I so love this place. So that's that was my journey, and I think while I was growing up, there was a lot more emphasis on engineering, software, and things like that. Probably because my family had a lot of engineers and things like that, and I think it's typical in India too. If you ask anybody, they'd say the best way to be successful, which is to become an engineer or a doctor, which may be or may not be true because here there are a lot of people successful in different things and different ways. But that's how you grew up on because that's the thought process over there. But I really liked the way things like really attracted software to me, and even as a part of college campus, right? Uh, there were different companies coming for interview, and this Infosys company used to come, and that was like most sought after because they never had a written exam or a big oral and things like that. They'll give you about 15 puzzles to solve, and if you're able to solve all the 15 puzzles, then they you're in. Basically they are testing your analytical and critical thinking abilities, and it'll be like at that time tough puzzles for me. So those type of things really I gravitated towards that and trying to solve problems or even using technology. So it was a great sense of accomplishment when I solved all the puzzles, and then I found out that I was in. That yeah, that was a good thing. But then as I gravitated and start working on IT too, back in 2001, right? Of course, the technologies and the internet boom, what we are having at the moment versus what there was like minuscule when compared to it. There were still like mainframes and COBOL languages and CAKES programming and or VB.NET, none of, or some level of Java and open source had come, which was budding. So that all gravitated towards me in terms of like more solving the problem, right? And writing a code or a program to solve some need, and I used to get a lot more thrill out of it. So that kept me going, and that was my passion and kind of doing that. And then once I started come here, it was Mellon Bank, and now it's called Bank of New York Mellon. I worked here for almost 7 years, until 2000, or 6 years till 2007. And then Infosys had lost the contract with Mellon Bank at the time, and then it was to somebody else. So I had to move to Florida, and a lot of people would take that opportunity. But we were married, and we just had our first son, who was very young. So I decided to look for opportunities in Pittsburgh itself because we didn't want to move or make a big change with already us going through a lot of transition in life, adjusting with the new member in the family and things of that nature. So one of my friends referred me to ARIS, which was a relocation management company. I've never heard of relocation management company before, and I never knew that such a big market existed for it. So I thought, okay, let me try it. And the moment I interviewed, I really liked the people there, and I really liked the type of culture in terms of being open, transparent, hardworking culture, and collaborative. Kind of, as soon as I attended the interview, I kind of felt like this is the place I want to be.
Hmm.
And of course, at that time, I had interviewed. I was more interviewing for. Since then, I had worked multiple things, and I was more a project manager when I was in Infosys because I had worked through the ranks and gotten a lot of other work done. But then I was interviewing for a developer position, and they thought that I might be a step down opportunity for me, and uh, it might not be a fit. So then I decided to pass the opportunity, or we decided, okay, it may not be a fit, and we left it at that. And I was thinking about either going back to India or moving to Florida, and at that time, 3 months later, they called me back and said, there is another position open, which is more suitable for you. Would you be interested in joining? And I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And I joined. And I thought maybe it might be a intermediate place because I was going through transition in the family and adjusting to new people and or with the kid and everything. Maybe it might be an intermediate place, and then eventually I'll look for more, banking related things because that's what you're
Mhm.
used to and all of that. But I fell in love with relocation. I fell in love with the company. I fell in love with all the people, and you kind of have a sense of belonging there. Once you have that sense of belonging, then you start contributing to the company and things of that nature. So that's my story before I got to Aries.
That's really cool. I'm curious from if just to step back for a moment because I
Mhm.
do want, of course, eventually get back to when you joined Airs. Before you came to the U.S., when you were studying engineering in India, and I know you started at Infosys in India, um, did you want to come to the U.S.? Like, was that part of a potential plan, or were you sort of going to stay there and you only came because an opportunity came up?
Um, a little bit of both because I was very young at that time,
Mm.
meaning like I really wanted more opportunities and experiences, that's for
Mhm.
sure. But I didn't have like a written down goal by X year I need to be here or those type of things. It was more like, okay, it was a greenfield thing. Let's see what it is. And the opportunity presented itself. And they asked me, would you be interested? And I said, yeah, sure. So that is how it transpired. And I think around 2001, 2002, even though there was September 9/11 happened, still there was a lot more .com opportunities, and the IT field was really hot at that time. So there was lot more opportunities there, and a lot of my friends, whoever I joined in Infosys, everybody were like either going to the US or UK. So you kind of thought that that's a advancing opportunity too. So I took it when it came back.
I'm curious, and I'm almost nervous to ask this in case anyone who's listening now is perhaps going through the H-1B process. But um, I imagine the H-1B process back then was much easier or simpler or more streamlined. What do you remember about it? I mean, was it really stressful? Were you, did it take a long time?
Actually, when I have a very good experience of H-1B process because there was not a lot of wait, the backlog and things like that, and it is there. Not so much with the green card, which
Mm,
which is very interesting. And of course, at that time, I didn't also make up my mind whether I want to apply for a green card or not. So I didn't apply for a long period of time. I only applied it in 2009. So
oh,
there was such a long period of wait because I wasn't really sure, am I going to settle here in the US for good or not. So I was like, okay, let me go on H1B. And it was interesting, I took a break 1 year back to India too, and came back because I got married and I came back. So I really had like 12 full years because you can consider like the first stint, and then the second stint you get 6 years too. So
mm,
so I had till like full 12 years. So that's why I thought, okay, I have enough runway in terms of not needing a green card. And then applied in 2009. Believe it or not, I got my green card only in 2020. So it was like
wow.
11, 11 years. Yeah.
Congratulations. It's fairly recent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, and I'm curious. I was doing a little bit of research actually the other day, and I saw I was just looking at some of the H-1B cap numbers from specifically from around the turn of the millennium, really around the year 2000, and I mean the cap was like 100,000+ H-1Bs. And just thinking about how much different it is today, and how much of a headache it can be, and of course, forget about the green card backlog. So it's just always interesting for me to hear about how relatively simple or easy it was back, about 20 years ago. So it's great. I mean, it's great that you had that experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're
Just
in the U.S. Oh
just
yeah.
to add on to that, while you're talking about it, I remember like I never recollected like this H1B filling out the 1st of April. Like nowadays or even recently, you get all the quotas filled. Like I remember we applied for December, so there was no like there was so much opening there,
Mhm.
and then December, and then I got it in March. So there was no code hub to be completed, like we didn't max out and things of that nature. So, and then that was there for almost 4 or 5 years, at least the way I remember it, 2006 or 2005. I might be 1 or 2 years up or down. It was not like so back or maxed out day 1 of April or day 2 of April. It was never there. I don't recall being that way.
Yeah, now it's just a mad rush to get all the applications. I mean, it's a little bit different now with the registration system, the electronic registration system, but before the registration system, but after the cap was lowered and it became so intense. Yeah, I mean, you've got, I mean, I came from the immigration lawyer's point of view. We had just hundreds and hundreds or thousands of applications sitting in the office, and then you have to have custom pickups from, UPS or FedEx, and they yeah, it's a crazy time. And of course, it'd be so much better if, if the cap was lifted or if there were more opportunities to file for an H-1B, but also, of course, if there was electronic filing, which, talks about the technology side of things.
Yeah.
But so I kind of want to get back to your story a little bit. So you were at Infosys, this opportunity came up to move to Florida. You decided not to move to Florida. You really loved Pittsburgh. You had a new child, a young child. And so you joined AIRS not really knowing what an RMC is and about the relocation, I guess, global mobility industry. And, I know you mentioned, of course, the people were great and the culture was great. I'm curious, was there any, and maybe there wasn't, but I guess I always am wondering about this. Was there any connection that you made to the clients of AIRS, or I guess the beneficiaries of the clients, right? If the clients are companies, then of course they're moving their employees around. Did you ever bridge that connection between what those people were going through and then what you had gone through? Like, did you think, oh, I guess I relocated too. I had someone deal with my immigration and I found an apartment and all that stuff. Did that help in any way, or was it just like a nice to have, but it didn't impact how you felt working there?
It did help. I mean, I could definitely relate to people, right? Because I myself have relocated, and it's no matter how much help you have, it is a stressful event, right? And we all know that, because when you come to a new place, culture is different. I'll give you an example. Like, I used to be so used to carrying cash in my pocket. I never had like a card, or I had a card, but back in India at that time, the digital currency were not so much. Now it's maybe fully there. So even the concept of when I open my purse and then I take like $100 bill, the hotel person, like when I was trying to bill, the guy was like, "Whoa!" And I need to check all the bills. So my point is, I really had that empathy for people who are moving and trying to settle in a new place, because everything is different, and you just need to understand what the culture is, and what the accepted practices are, and things of that nature. And even like for me to create a bank account, I had to wait for such a long time, get so many things. It was such a process, and I see the importance of why you need those documents. But without knowing all of that, I really had that empathy. Somebody is going through that, and connecting to AIRS too. I think AIRS has this DNA of becoming or so client centric, right? If client needs it, they are always about understanding what the client needs, which is corporate client, but also about the transferees too. So that also kind of like exposes you. Like within 6 months, I was directly, like, once I get know all of it, I was like directly put in direct connection with the clients and the transferees, to talk to them, to understand what it is happening, and trying to design products for them, right? So when you are really on that front line, you really are able to connect the dots and figure out, okay, this is what they would want, and this is what they are going through, and your experience kind of helps in that, because sometimes you go through that, and you're who you bring along all your experiences, and that kind of shapes all the things, solutions, what you bring to the table too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because you can understand exactly their like sort of their business requirements are you may have experienced them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good transition point, because I'm curious to kind of jump in and learn a little bit more about AIRS. So I know I want to jump into sort of the technology within the company and what you do and sort of, what you guys are building and maybe what you're looking towards in the future. But I'm curious, Airs has been around since the 80s, I think. What can you share about, and I genuinely don't know all that much about the company's history, either. Like, what do you know about the history? Just very briefly, kind of what can you share about the kind of, the foundation of why, who created the company, why it was created, and sort of how it transformed over time?
Sure. So we started in 1981 as a freight forwarder, international freight forwarder. It's still a private-owned company. It started by Jim Putt, and he's retired at the moment, but he comes into our office. I have seen him. We all have great reverence for him, for the man who he is. He set up the company, and they are, I think, more. We specialized in international freight forwarding, which is more household goods in the 80s and 90s. But then most of our clients whom we shared account with, they said, well, you're great at household goods, but would you mind doing relocation benefits and other things too? Because we really like your service and your service attitude. We want you to expand. So again, being the client centricity we are in, we said, yeah, sure. If it meets your needs, we'll expand. And we in 2000s we went into relocation services, which is basically the destination and everything. And then even in early 2000 we started the real estate side of it too. So all that came along well in terms of then shaping into a good relocation management company. I think when I look at the history, I think most of it, our evolution is based on what our client needed in terms of how can we serve our clients better. And the leadership also has been there as a strong pillar for a long period of time. So when you have that leadership strength where everybody knows each other and they know how to think, but also they're always forward looking, that kind of adds that, the strand to the DNA of the company, consistency and more even strategy is very clear. Like the vision is very clear, and that is what I see progressing or pushing us forward, because the same people who were founded, of course, Jim Putt founded, and then his son Brian Putt took over, and he was more on the technology, and then he was the CEO of the company, and then Jeff Wangler is the president of the company. And then we have Jolene, Eric Tate, and Jennifer Murr, Pam Dunleavy. There are a number of people who are in part of the leadership in the company, who have been with the company, who grew up in the company, who joined from the lowest rank and worked their way through all different roles. Helps them understand and bring that perspective, right? Because they have been in like a counselor, and then they have been in sales roles, they have been in customers or customer service side of it. So that kind of, you see when you talk to, or probably you would have noticed this when you talk to different people at Ares, that value of that leadership and that value of the DNA of being very client centric kind of pulls us all together and make sure that we are always looking towards to delivering that need.
I'm curious, just from a business perspective, and I know you probably can't know this, fully, but I think it's really cool when a company is, well, number one, it's great that Airs was already providing a great service, and your customers at the time, instead of leaving for someone who had the other services they were looking for, they actually said, "Look, we like you. We like working with you. Can you expand into this, additional service that we also need, on top of what you're already doing?" I think that's an incredible way to expand. I think there's a lot of, the mainstream business news very often is about raising outside capital, and you almost grow ahead of your clients, and then you sort of find the clients to fit with your service. But of course, traditional business is kind of the opposite. You sort of grow with the needs of your clients, or at least at the same time. I'm just curious, from a business perspective, from whatever you can know or share, do you know what that transition period was like? And maybe maybe it's still happening now, where your clients are asking to do more, et cetera. Like, what recommendations, I guess, and I'm asking this selfishly too, because I'm thinking always to myself, how can I continue growing? How can we all continue growing? What do you see are best practices for, kind of going and fulfilling the needs of your clients and growing with them in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I think if I were to take that perspective too, right, is that Aries has been organically growing, as you mentioned, on a year over year, and because of the clients who love us for the services we do. And it is a journey, because it's been, I wouldn't say we stop here too, because as we are talking about it, there are a number of clients say, well, we like XYZ, but then if you could get this, and we are always say, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. And I think that figuring out mentality and making sure that we are serving our client need has taken us in this journey really well. And I think sometimes, even we encourage a lot of ideas too, but keeping clients our um, guiding post, or giving us the direction of which way to go is always served as well, because they, one way or the other, we are trying to serve for the client. And sometimes, there might be other ideas and things of that nature, but whenever we had stick to our core in terms of how can it serve the client well, and if a client is leading there, and if a client is needing there, we are not always, or we are not afraid of saying, yes, we will commit to it and we'll figure out how to get it done. So I think that's something which I see from the history that has served us really well. As you said, there are other sales or other business um, strategy too, right? It's similar to what you said. Okay, let's figure out a white field or green field market, and let's come up with a product or a solution, and then find the clients. And that has worked well too. But I think from an Aries DNA perspective, I see the organic growth being the path which we have chosen, which has served us really well. And I think um, we are not afraid to say um, yes to our people, right, and or to our clients. And we always say this: how much of an S we can give to our client is something which we always strive to do. Means there are cases where, again, we cannot say S all the time, but we want to be in a place where how much of S we can meet. And if a client is asking for it, then there is going to be definitely a value. Somebody is going to be using it, and it's why not serve that need. So that I would definitely say um, is very, very important. And at least from our perspective, company perspective, has served as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool, and it's nice to see that it still exists. That kind of like, that kind of business model, and or I suppose that kind of growth trajectory. Okay, and thank you for sharing that. I want to take a very quick kind of pause just to see if, for folks who are watching again, if you want to give yourself a shout out, leave a comment, leave a question for Anand or myself, that would be awesome. We're always looking forward, or it's always fun to kind of have, live discussions and answer questions and things like that. So Anand, I want to jump into a little bit about the technology within Airs, right? So kind of your domain, your forte, where, okay, Airs is a relocation management company, started as freight forwarding. It started as I'm assuming, I guess, more of a logistics company, if you will. I don't know if that's how you would, categorize a freight moving company. You're moving goods, things from one place to another. Now, of course, you're helping with the, facilitating the movement of goods and the people, and helping with different processes around it. Where does technology come in now? Like how, why do you have a job, right? Why do you have a team? What is the technology behind Airs?
Sure. So the same vein of organic growth, we have also built all our technology solution organically. So everything we own in terms of like built from the ground up. So the type of technology we serve to our audiences are three or four different people, right? The first is our corporate client who is hiring us to do, and we want to provide them with technology which helps them to initiate people and let them know where they are and how their dollars are being managed, spent, or even more in terms of statuses of an employee or how their program looks like. And they want us to come with a lot more advice based on the data of the employees whom we are moving and things of that nature. So that's one spectrum of the technology being used as a product to serve our corporate client needs. The second is the actual transferee, which the person is moving, and they are often stressed, and we want the technology to provide because they want a lot more self-service option plus the customer service too, because if you're 1 a.m. in the night and you want to know when is my shipment arriving, you don't feel like calling anybody, but I want to log in an app or log in a website and see where my things are, what I needed to do, then I definitely need a technology from that perspective. And then internally, we have a case management system, which we call the Iris, which is all our counselors, and we use it for customer service. And all of that is the same system. It's tied so that it's a different view depending on who's logging in and how they are looking at. And our internal employees use that, and they always put all the data and use it for their case management. And one of the important thing is that we have grown as number of different services, so the system really guides all the people to do XYZ. Hey, you need to do these things, and we call them like a specific program called Assist, which kind of helps them to remind, okay, here are the list of things need to be done, and manage their things effectively. So that's one, or the third side of it. And the final thing is we also provide technology to our partners, because we don't own the entire relocation services, right? If you needed household goods, we are hiring partners, or if you needed immigration, we are hiring partners. So we needed to provide data to them, and we provide technology services around that so that we can efficiently collaborate. And the end goal is more, again, trying to create efficiencies and then a better user experience. Those are the two things that it boils down to in terms of why I have a job, or what the technology provides to our end clients.
So it's information delivery. It's sort of service delivery as well, where it sounds like can they like open tickets, or that's sort of like, can they initiate some sort of an action within, I guess, is Iris the overarching platform, or that's just one of the tools?
Iris is the internal platform. MobilityX is the overarching platform for clients and our transferees.
Got it. Okay, so when a client or transferee log into MobilityX, are they able? Okay, they can see their data, they can see where things are in a process. Are they able to, initiate some sort of a case or thing like that?
Yeah, the clients can initiate a case. They can do a number of different things. The transferees can also do a lot of action items in there, so that they know what to do, what to be done. Like, you need to fill up a valid inventory form, so they can fill up the valued inventory form for their household goods move, or you need to complete your passport for your immigration things, or you need to do certain things. So all of that, they can initiate actions. And there are a number of different workflows in the system too. If you do this step, then it automatically goes to the next person, whoever is responsible for doing it, and routing and things of that nature. So it's not only just information display, it helps them to automate workflows as well, depending on what are the natures of the jobs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And it's also interesting too, because obviously it's an internal, I mean, you guys are a service company, you're not a SaaS. And so it's always really fascinating, when a company does decide to and executes on building technology that is effectively purely for internal purposes, to serve clients, rather than being a kind of revenue center in and of itself.
Mhm.
I'm sure if you wanted to, in another parallel universe, you could spin out, MobilityX and sell it. But I mean, that's just, the idea is that, right, the way that AIRS operates is that you are a technology based RMC, and I'm assuming that's big part of your selling point. If you're getting and taking on a new client, et cetera, all of the technology that you've got in store, and obviously as the industry moves into a more digital first industry, it's really important to have that. One thing you mentioned is, working with your partners, whether they're immigration law firms or others, and of course there's some sort of information or data sharing. And maybe these are closed or private APIs, but do you see any movement in the sort of API front in the industry, because there's not a lot of this that's open, right? Most companies have the ability to, build out and connect via APIs, but they don't have the, that open. So I don't know, what are you seeing in that end? Do you see any movement there? Like, what's your thought on APIs?
So I do see a lot of movement, right? We have never, so overall relocation or mobility has been slow to adopt technology. I'm talking like last 30 years, or I'm talking in that scale, right? 30 years or 15 years in that nature. But if you look at the last 5 years, then we have never moved so fast in adopting technology than ever, right? When you compare to the last 25 years. So in that aspect, yes, definitely we see a lot of requests from our clients, but also from our partners to say, yeah, can we integrate between our systems, because we don't want to be admin work, and we want lifetime data and efficiency gains. And we have integrated with a number of immigration partners. But you are correct; those are being point to point or a peer to peer, however you want to call it. And we try to connect or match our data dictionaries as needed. And there is some level of translation going on there. Where we would love to see is that if it becomes a standardized data dictionary, then it is a lot more beneficial to everybody, right? Then we don't need to agree on how to integrate, as long as we know what data we are doing. Then every partner or every um, client may have a different technology, but they can always, as long as the standard is there, we can communicate in a common fashion. So we would love to do that, and we've been engaged with some partners of ours and to see if there is movement. But I would love to be a part of that discussion and move that along. There are, of course, currently a lot of challenges and roadblocks in terms of who owns that, how do we come up with the standard, um, and then is there any conflict of interest with the other things. So there are other things like that which are roadblocks at the moment. But I wish, or not wish, I hope that the industry would come, as we start adopting more and more of these integration, that we would form standards, and which is more open standards. And that'll be good, because it's a lot more efficiency for everybody, right? So that'll be a really good thing. And it's not something novel in the industry. It means if you take the banking industry, which I come from the prior, and they used to have like a electronic data interchange, and there are different standards in there, and they follow it, and that's how they even like communicate a wire transfer is being done. If you want to from one country to another, they don't. It doesn't matter what bank A in USA uses with software versus a bank B in China uses. As long as you communicate in the wire transfer format, you can move money around. So I think that's if we can get to that level of standard formats in relocation industry too, I think that will be a good thing for us.
And for just to take that example, who came up with the standardization of language there? Is it a consortium of banks? Is it government people?
Yeah, they had a Swift code, or like let me take Wire for an example. It's called Swift, and that was a consortium which defined Swift, and they had a specific format. And there was a third-party consortium which did that. And same thing with even EDI too, electronic data interchange, or even if you look at REBA, like procurement networks have their own interchange formats too. So there is a number of use cases where some third party defines it, or maybe within the same, whoever is involved define the standards too, but then it is being then promoted across the board.
And I'm asking this because, in the specifically in the immigration world, so I would say a subset of what AIRS touches, this debate is huge. I mean, if anyone is watching or listening that has watched or listened to prior episodes of this, or just has been part of specifically immigration technology discussions, the idea of standardization of language in order for different form or document automation software providers to talk to one another. And then, of course, eventually the hope is that could talk to the government, right? USCIS, different DHS systems. That's an ongoing conversation. And the big question is always, well, who is going to decide on the standards? I mean, every platform has its own, as you call, data dictionary. And so maybe do we all look at each other's, verbiage and determine which one makes more sense or less sense? I like the idea, then it's like, well, no, mine's better. Do do you bring in a third party sort of consortium that can objectively look at this and not bring baggage in from the industry and say, okay, now we understand what you need. Here's a list. Here's the vocabulary that you're all going to implement. And I bring this up because not only is this a big topic of discussion, but then, okay, let's say the immigration industry decides on some set of, some set of language, some language set, if you will. Do you, as an RMC who touches immigration but also touches other things, are you still finding a problem now with translating that because it doesn't necessarily fit in with your other, freight, related database or, like, I guess my question is, I don't even know if this is a question. Maybe I'm just rambling with thoughts, but the idea of how small or niche can these consortia be before you hit a wall of like, okay, well, we've got immigration defined, but then global mobility more broadly doesn't really agree with this. So does the definition within just immigration, is that fruitful for the broader global mobility industry? I don't know. That's not a question. I'm just thinking through it.
I see what you mean. And also the way I'm also brainstorming or thinking out loud, right, along with you in terms of following the thought process. I do think that what is common across all these different services, right? When I mean services, immigration, household goods provider, destination service provider, et cetera, is that the transferee data, that's going to be the same. And depending on each services, you might need some subset of data or all of them, depending on what it is. So that one or that pieces of data does not change. But you are correct that the immigration, I call them the verticals. Each of those verticals are requiring different unique sets of data, which again, if we can look at it at a higher level, we can say, here is the standard set of data, and then here is the different verticals, and here are some flex things which each vertical can define, right? And that has happened even within EDI, electronic data interchange format, because I used to work in that the banking field, because each one of the banks, depending on what they want, the specific transaction set, they might want to use custom things in there, which is unique to that immigration in this example, or household goods and things of that nature. So you still try to come up with a global standard, but then you allow for some level of flexibility in those verticals. I think we can accomplish the best of both worlds. So that way, the immigration provider says, well, I need XYZ for this thing. And then the household goods provider is not worried about it because I don't need it. And we can definitely get there.
Yeah, I take your point as basically we got to have some progress because it's never going to be perfect for everybody. So at least if we get 80% of the way there and then we allow flexibility for the other 20%, that's still, progress. Yeah, it's just an interesting conversation, or that continues to be ongoing. And of course, again, at least from the immigration side, a big piece of the puzzle is the government side of things, where there's very little technology from the submitting of immigration applications perspective. And so you can have the most brilliant, well thought out, technical vocabulary. But then if the government says, well, we're opening up our APIs now, and here's how we called everything, if it doesn't match, there's, that creates challenges. So hopefully it would be an industry within this vertical, at least it would be an industry-wide collaboration between private and public sector. I guess it's not as much the case at the higher level global mobility. I mean, move is a move, if your household goods are your household goods, but it would be cool to see more of that. Just a random thought. I wonder if it's possible to have some sort of like natural language processing AI layer that can understand that transferee is the same thing as beneficiary, is the same thing as non-immigrant, and sort of like, just know. I don't know. That would be cool. Maybe in 50 years.
I think that's not a wild idea. I think that's a well within the realm. And even a lot of forget about AI, like a lot of ERP systems have these adapters. They call them the adapters, where because of the data dictionary being different, and you would say, okay, here is my what I call beneficiary, and here is what the transferee, and you just drag and drop and say those both mean the same thing, then the adapter is basically going to process the data. And the moment I hit beneficiary, okay, that means it's transferee, and map it to the same thing. So that concept has been around, and there are some solutions. But I think the more variabilities come into picture is where there are so many different uh, patterns of that, then definitely AI or ML can scale to that, right? Because they can be a little bit smart enough, and provided you teach them and they learn on the go, I see that a lot more scalable in that aspect. So
This brings me to, kind of where I always love to ask, and it's such a perfect transition, because I mean, to your point, some of this exists already, but of course, from a scalability perspective, you can't have people drawing lines manually between one word and another. Um, so if we're talking, future, what do you see for that you can share, for the future of, AIR's technology? Like, where do you guys want to go? Where are you going? Where would you like the industry to go? What are some of the things that you think about, not from a project perspective at work, but like globally, that you would love to see in the future, in the space?
yeah, I think we would love, or let me talk about this. We would love to be where our client want us to be. So that's always been our mantra, and
Sure.
you'll be able to see that. But that being said, the expectations from technology from everybody is increasing more and more, right? If you take 15 or 20 years ago, you had a product, it was more like from a buying decision perspective, it was a checklist item. Yes, you did, and then you would sign up for the services. But now, even evaluation of a company, there are so many technology people involved there in terms of how our product is going to be and things of that nature. So looking forward in the future, we see that the expectation from our clients and our transferees in terms of how technology can provide experience in terms of the customer service, these are not both going to go away, because these are going to be merging more and more, where I would want use of technology as much as I need, but at the same time, I would want to talk to somebody too. So, from that perspective, this platform concept of making sure we connecting the right people at the right time based on who wants to be connected, and then making sure that you reduce the admin and noise when people don't want to be connected, and seeing the data in the system is where we see the future. And it's more, if I were to say use a term, it's more of a platform concept, right? Platform is like you bring in like Uber. What does it Uber do? It connects for people who are driving, or who are ready to rent their um, car to somebody who needs a ride, right? And it happens so live, like live time. It's not like in the airport you have to book in a cab, or go to that place and do that. So that type of platform concept is where I think futuristically even RMC is going, or across the board in the mobility is going, where they would want
Hmm.
everything data to be central, but at the same time trying to reach out for subject matter experts in the areas where I wanted, and being able to make that in a holistic way rather than a lot of transition or disjointed experiences, is definitely something which our clients are asking for us, and we see that as a future. So from that perspective, we want to be in a place where we deliver the best technology, to connect our clients to our partners or to transferees, and do the right level of customer service as well as the digital experiences merging together, so that it becomes more holistic for them, right? um, Even like, I'll give you an example. I went I was like traveling, not this before COVID. I was traveling, and my one of the flight was delayed, or in the connecting flight, like my flight was delayed, and then my connecting flight was also, I missed it. So usually what I do is that, um, you have to go and stand in the line in the customer service, and then they look you up and then say, okay, here is the next flight. Where would you like to go? And you do it, right? And I had this Delta app, and it said, "Looks like you missed your connection flight. Here are three options. Which one you want to choose?"
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, I want that." And I chose, and then right there, it was leaving in next 20 minutes. I was there, checked in, and went my way. And I thought that was a really good experiences from the Delta app, because it made like it made my life easier. That technology really made my life easier, and I didn't have to stand in line not knowing what it is. I felt in control too. Okay, do I want to select this flight or the other flight, because they had kind of space in them, and then I chose what is more important to me, and I selected and moved on. Um, so that was really like a good thing from my perspective, in how Delta helped me manage a stressful situation, right? I didn't know what it is. So we definitely see that level of becoming really smart in terms of what the client and the transferee wants, and aiding that experience via technology, but at the same time not kind of fully going an automated way. We still believe that there is a need and place for customer service, because that's our roots, and making sure that both or um, merge together, so that it enhances the experiences where we see it going. The other aspect is also information security, right? Which we have talked about everywhere. It is all about. I think if you see some of these uh, hacks or everything made, it's not necessarily because a big company was exposed. They go through different partner network and things of that nature, and they get to this corporate client. So we serve on the horizontal layer a broad spectrum of clients, and we have a lot of their sensitive data. So from that standpoint, information security is going to be really, really key in terms of ensuring that we only show what people are allowed to see, and also protecting that data, which is nothing new. But when we look into the future, that is something which we continue to take that very seriously and invest on, because that's something is going to be really important. So those are two aspects in terms of making sure that enhancing the digital experiences, so that it's reducing noise, but at the same time doesn't overpower the customer service. That's one aspect, and then the information security.
I love that. Love that. Just one quick shout out here. Shiv says, "Hello, gentlemen." Shiv from Atlanta, fellow immigration technology entrepreneur. So thanks, Shiv, for the comment here. One thing I wanted to note on that is not only are you helping connect, like your thought process here, not only are you helping connect, let's say transferees to vendors, but also that you brought up the Uber example, the time efficiency as well. Even and with the Delta app, you were able to do it quickly. I was going to ask you then, how do you feel about this idea of, like, let's say online marketplaces that are popping up? I've had at least one or two on this show in the past that seem to are bringing together global providers of everything from household goods moving to immigration law, destination service providers, etc. And you could sort of book, I guess, if you will, their services through there. They might be more for lump sum moves, or where it's not going through a corporate kind of program, but then there has to be a case management on the side. There has to be. So I don't know, where do you see heirs in any way, shape, or form participating in that, or like benefiting or connecting to one of these things? I feel like that would go towards what you were just sharing of connecting your clients with some of your partners within your network.
Yeah. I think we are always open in terms of trying to ensure that there is a business need when the client is there, at the same time partner and being part of this network, or us connecting the people, either be through our platform, right, or integrating with other platforms where there is a need where they are trying to do it. So either one of it, we are open, and we want to look at more what makes the most sense for our client and what makes the business sense for us too, and make sure that they are aligned. And we want to go there too, because I do think that that is eventually going to happen. Means, take that marketplace concept. We are dabbling at the moment. We do have a lump sum solution, which we had. And now with the second version of it, we are dabbling more a lighter version of marketplace concept, where we are trying to connect a number of different vendors, and then at the same time do underlying case management, right? So that way we provide an experience to the transferee, and if they needed to call a counselor, something is wrong, we are able to reach out, or we are able to provide that level of service to the transferee too. So that's something which we definitely are entertaining, and we are working through some ideas and trying to work through, okay, how does this future look like version 2.0 of our application called Springboard, which is our lump sum solution,
Mhm.
and how does that do? And we want to be a place where we again want to be a lightweight, where we want to connect and not add a lot more drag to it, right? Because sometimes we think that technology adds a lot more solution, and then sometimes it's so siloed. We want to make it a very lightweight, and how can the transferee benefit from it? And what we understood also is that, a transferee with a lump sum move, their needs and their experiences are totally different from a full service relocation benefit person receiving a full mobility services move, because the way they look at it and the way their persona and the way they make decisions are totally different. And then there is some, like you might have seen, like there are some people who have a mix of a middle of both, right, where they have a core and a flex and options and things of that nature. But what we learned through that process is the way the experiences they want are totally unique and different than each of those spectrums or each of those things. And there is no common, okay, this is the common cookie cutter solution. And we are learning, and we always also learn from more uh, what the transferees want and data from that too, right? Because what we thought was great is that maybe something may need to be refined more, and
Mhm.
we need to look at it and say, okay, where can we refine it and where can we grow on it? And that's something which we consistently do, and that's something which I'm really passionate, and that makes me exciting every day to come to want to work, right? Because you're solving a problem, and how best to solve, and making sure that you're enhancing the experience, not technology for the sake of technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I remember I was listening to a panel, probably just before COVID, about immigration technology specifically. And it was something along the lines of, don't just adopt tech for tech's sake. Make sure that you are looking at the problems that your organization has and finding technology providers that are going to offer solutions to those problems. Don't just tack on things to your tech stack to say that you have technology, where it might be, to your point, creating more friction internally rather than efficiency. So I think it's really interesting. It's a good reminder, because I think the industry is still pretty old school overall. I mean, we're not, this is not a bleeding edge industry from a technology standpoint. We see what else is going on out there, and we watch cautiously, and then we kind of cherry pick the things that we think are going to be, which is good, but at the same time slow. And so I think sometimes when people want to appear quote unquote faster, they end up taking way too much from what's out there in the world, and then it ends up being more of a weight on their organization rather than helpful. So it's a good reminder. Um, I want to ask you kind of one more question, I guess, if I can.
Sure.
I'm curious, from your experience so far, both as somebody who relocated, you know, himself and went through the immigration and the relocation process, and now you build technology for this industry. I don't know what's sort of like one major, I don't know if you want to call it a takeaway or one major lesson you've learned, that you think that if someone out there listening was either getting started in their career or has an idea to build some sort of a technological solution for the industry, that they should keep in mind. And of course there's always, listen to your customer and all that, but like, I'm wondering if there's anything specific that you think, that isn't really being discussed out there that people should really keep in mind as we build more tech.
One of the things which comes to my mind when you asked me that question too, right, is the same Delta app. I didn't know that such a function existed, and it was not a drag at all. And so, if the technology really worked, the user wouldn't even know, or it will be part of whatever they do. It
Mm,
will be like so embodied with them, so they don't feel like, oh well, I need to open an app, I need to do XYZ, or I need to figure out where it is. So for that person who's going through, of course, you need to understand the client, that's fine, but the real test of how you're successful in providing the need is that when that person even doesn't feel that there is like they didn't even know that they're using it and they're getting their jobs done, So I think that will be like the Delta app is a great example for me because it didn't I didn't know. It just automatically popped up a text message, and then I clicked on it. It opened it. I selected, and then it went away. And then that's it. And then it was not like a grand, oh, look at this or whatever, right? Or a bells and whistles. It helped my job getting done, and then I moved on. And I didn't even realize because I was in a hurry at that time. I did all of that, but then when I was sitting on the airplane in the connecting flight, I said, "Oh, that was easy. That was better than what I thought," right? So I think that's the true test of the technology is that it shouldn't be even there, or the
Mm.
people wouldn't even recognize that I need to do X, Y, Z. It shouldn't be. It should be transparent. At least that's how I would say.
That's a really cool. I really like the way you put that. There's a really good book that I read a few years ago. It's called The Effortless Experience, that I would highly recommend to anyone who's interested in talking about customer experience as well, whether from a tech perspective or more generally. And their thesis was kind of like, you don't need to go above and beyond. There's a lot of people talking about delighting the customer and doing something unscalable to really blow the customer's mind, and that is good and it makes customers happy. But I think their idea was something of what you're saying. You have to make it so that their experience with you is effortless, that they don't forget about delight. It should be as if like there's just no there's it's not even there. It's just it's as natural as walking or breathing or eating or drinking, which like you said here with the Delta app. So yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point. And it's hard to do that because you have to not only understand the client, you have to be a step ahead of them and offer them the notification that says, hey, it looks like you missed your flight, right? Here are a few options to make your life easier. They offered that for you rather than you having to open up the app and click on flight missed and then see the options. They just offered it to you. So they were a step ahead, which is, I think, really genius. So that's cool. Thank you. Thanks for that insight. That's a really interesting one. So I like to end these conversations with something kind of, I don't know, more fun and maybe unrelated to the professional career. You moved to America from India to Pittsburgh, which is an amazing city, the steel city. There's so much beautiful history. But it's still not like the city that most people would think of, when they think of America. It's not the first one, maybe LA or New York or Miami. I'm curious, do you have a favorite, like Pittsburgh memory that you think, is one of the reasons that is kind of keeping you in the city, some kind of a fun or maybe silly memory that is just to you is quote unquote very Pittsburgh?
Well, I think it's not unique to Pittsburgh, but it is kind of a good experience. One of the main reasons, which means this is not like unique, right? But what makes your city better is that when you have a good network of friends, and I had established a good network of friends who were in the same boat I was in. So we got all married, we all got kids. So it's like you all have this family connection. But I remember during that time we went on the first 1 year or 2 year. It's called a ducky tour. Ducky tour is. Have you heard about that? It is more like it's a tour of Pittsburgh, but it goes on land as well as in water.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's basically it'll have this one of those like big trucks, which will be like a shape of a ship, but it'll have wheels and things like that. So it goes and talks about the Great Pittsburgh, and then all of a sudden, then it'll go into the river, and then it'll start going in the river as more of a boat, right? So that was a very fun experience I had, and I always remember. And whoever comes to visit me, I take them on a ducky tour, or I tell them, "Hey, you should go on the ducky tour." For it was one of the silliest things. I don't know if I think it is there for some other cities too. I don't think it's so unique to Pittsburgh, but that was the funnest thing I like about, and I kind of try to get all the people who are visiting me to go with me on that.
That's so funny. I love it. I've never been on one of those tours, and even as you're talking to me and explaining this, I'm thinking, how do they insulate the gears and the wheels when when it's submerged? I mean, it's pretty cool if you think about it, that you can go off land into water.
Yeah, Yeah, and it is fun. They always have a limit of how many people they'll take you, so that way it doesn't submerge in water. But
Right.
it's fun, and
It's not a submarine tour. It's an
yeah,
above water
it's
tour.
not about the tour.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Anand, thank you so much. This is really interesting, fun conversation. I definitely learned a lot about, airs and the technology that the company provides, and to your point, thinking about what's next for the industry, whether it's a common language within, between different companies, whether in a vertical or more broadly. And we're also talking about marketplace. There's a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. So I appreciate you spending your time and sharing, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Roman. It was nice spending time with you, and I get to know and share my experiences with the broader group as well. So thank you very much.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being here, for listening and watching. I appreciate it. For the shout outs, thanks Shiv for your comment, for always being a supporter and watching the show. So next week is Thanksgiving on Thursday, but I will be here for a show on Friday. So hopefully, if you're off from work and you don't know what to do at 4:00 p.m. Eastern, this will be live once again with another great guest. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend, and if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving, and see you next week. Peace out.